The corona is a global pandemic. We are all watching news day and night. We hear of how many people died in the First World War, how many people died in the Second World War, some 75 million. We compare it to the Spanish flu in 1918 that killed between 50 and 100 million people. On the one hand, we said only 10,000 people have died, or 5,000. The estimates are still coming in. We should not be complacent. Yes, the elderly are at risk, and that's what the media keeps telling us. The young people think they are invincible, and they are out there celebrating, and it does affect the young. We all need to pay attention because the world has never faced in its history a situation that today has affected 170 countries in the world are affected. And in the war, First and Second World War, there were 20 and 35 nations involved. So this is a global pandemic, and we don't know how long it's going to last. If we are just at the beginning, it is estimated that 3 people were the cause of the outbreak in Wuhan, which affected 80,000 people. So let us step back and recognize that this is a global pandemic that needs a global response, a coordinated global response. Why is there no United Nations Taskforce in place to confront this global pandemic? We urgently need a United Nations Taskforce. Imagine if we had a UN task force. Yesterday we heard from WHO that China has contained the corona-19. South Korea was able to do testing at 20,000 a day, and it's under control. Singapore, with its travel bans and testing and so on, have succeeded. Here are 3 countries that have lessons that are relevant not next week, but in the next hour to countries. If we had a task force, this could be globally communicated after rectifying, but it's not that. So I think we need to give the highest priority to this situation and set up a United Nations task force, a UN system-wide task force, because this is not just a medical emergency. Yes, in the coming days, coming weeks, coming months, it's a medical emergency. But beyond that, it's going to be an economic emergency. It's going to be an educational emergency. It's going to be a food security emergency. All these sectors will be affected by what happens within the next few months, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. So we need contingency plan across the board to put our world back to normal status. The challenge we have is we need to come together. And the UN can provide that framework and stop unilateral national actions. So let us talk for a moment, what can nations do now in this? Well, Europe is perhaps the best example. The European Union, comprising of European countries. We see their lockdown independent decisions by various countries. Here is a region of the world which has done the experiment of nations coming together with open borders, not only for trade but for people. And everything is being shut down with unilateral decisions. This is an example why the nations should have come together and shared the knowledge and worked out together whether lockdown is the answer. It may be an answer in the short term, but it is an answer in a month's time. So we need to be aware, we need to bring the brains of nations together to together come up with the best possible solution that they can find. So this needs to happen at the national level. If the United Nations does set up a corona pandemic task force, one of the first priorities will be to ask the question, what is going on in Africa, in Latin America, and in Asia, except for China. These three regions account for more than 5 billion people, which is 70% of the world's population. We need to know that because there are statements that the second wave of corona is coming in Asia. Well, it's going to be all over the world. We know 170 countries are affected, but we have very little information on many countries. And it is critical that this task force takes the baton to find out what's going on. Because the only way we can defeat corona is to identify the cases and confine them to recover and do the testing that is a prerequisite. So we need a global, worldwide action, and only the United Nations can provide the framework for such a task force.